I'm in mourning because spooky season is over.
She has this ugly crying face that she makes.
Okay, Megan, pull yourself together.
Carol! Get your shit together, Carol!
Hey there guys, my name's Megan if you're new here, and if not, welcome back for another spooky episode of Killer Weekend, where each week we'll discuss a true crime case and you guys can feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments box below. If you like all things true crime, supernatural, UFO, conspiracy theory and all that good stuff in between, then please hit that subscribe button. I'll be here for you each week with our true crime killer weekends and on and off every couple of Wednesdays with our weirdo Wednesdays, where we'll discuss something spooky I've heard. I will leave a small disclaimer at the beginning of this episode. It does involve details of violent crime and also sexual assault. If that's a trigger point for you, then please feel free to turn away now. Hey my wee gremlins, how are you all? I'm good, but guess who's just had another sinus infection? Me. Also, I know I'm like 7 years late to the party, but I feel like my eye makeup is very Euphoria today. Fun fact, one of the lead actresses in Euphoria, Alexa Demi, is apparently my age, but she plays a teenager. So I've been up till 5 AM researching her skincare routine. Is it Botox, microdermabrasion, or the souls of small children? I need to know. But enough about me and my irrational fear of turning into a fossil, because we've got a case to talk about. Now children, this one is truly terrifying and it's got a bit of everything. Murder, intrigue, and even some ghosts. One of the main reasons I was drawn to this case is because it takes place in my dream holiday destination, Colorado. Ever since I heard the song Tequila by Dan and Shay, I've been fantasizing about being sky high in Colorado with my lips pressed against the bottle. It's okay, I'll stop. However, as picturesque as it seems, the Centennial State harbours a few dirty secrets, one of those being a grisly homicide back in 1970. It's rumoured that 52 years later, the two female victims involved refused to cross over until their killer is brought to justice. But with the clocks ticking on by and still no hint of a conviction, does that mean their spirits will haunt the scene for eternity? Tonight, everyone, we will be discussing the chilling deaths of Cara Lee Knoche and Marianne Weaver, the lumber baron in Murders. In the early morning hours of October 13th, 1970, a young man was driving along West 37th Avenue in Denver, Colorado, when he noticed something odd. John Lechuga looked up at the Lumber Baron Inn, which at the time was functioning as an apartment building. His friend, 17-year-old Cara Lee Knoche, had been living in a first-floor flat for just over a month. Cara's apartment had come to be known as the party spot, so when John noticed all of the lights were off, he had a bad feeling. He decided to pop in, check on Cara, and make sure she was okay. But she was far from okay. Parked outside was the car of 18-year-old Marianne Weaver, Cara's best friend. John makes his way up the winding staircase, heading towards the room now known as the Valentine Suite. The door was open, and instantly he's met with a strange sight. Marianne Weaver is posed vampire style, arms folded across her chest, laying on Cara's bed peacefully. But she's not asleep. As John steps closer, he sees the single gunshot wound in the centre of her forehead. She's gone. Frantically, he moves around the room searching for Cara, now fearing for her safety. There's no sign of her until he notices something sticking out from under her bed. He creeps forward, his eyes fixed on the dark mass. He then realises it's Cara Lee Knoche's outstretched arm laying on the floor. Her partially nude body had been shoved under the bed frame. Unlike Marianne's cold execution, Cara's death had been much more personal. She had been stripped, sexually assaulted, and strangled. In complete horror, John flees to a local payphone at an all-night diner to call law enforcement. He then tells the dispatcher that his friends are dead. Apparently, this investigation was a little bit messy from the beginning. The first responding officer was supposed to secure the scene, but he didn't. Residents were wandering in and out of their units discussing the murders, so if you can imagine all of these people congregating in the hallway and also outside the apartment complex, this would have been an ideal time for the killer to slip away undetected. Crime scene investigators did try to lift prints from the bedroom, but this was a rundown building which wasn't cleaned regularly, and that meant there was far too many smudged fingerprints to be able to single out the killers. On the door to Cara's apartment, which she shared with another unnamed female, there appeared to be pry marks made by a knife. However, these could have been left behind from a burglary that took place only 1 month before. Items worth $250 and, weirdly enough, a love seat were stolen that day. Security was really lax in the rundown building, so it would have been simple enough for the girl's killer to break in using the same method. The different ways in which Cara and Marianne were murdered hinted to investigators that Cara was the intended victim. Police believed that Marianne, who planned on visiting her friend that evening, had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time and had walked in on Cara being assaulted, which then sealed her own fate. But why? Why would someone want these teenagers dead? And was he hiding in plain sight? Cara Lee Kanoki was born on October 11th, 1953 to her parents Elaine and Richard. She was raised alongside her brother Richard Jr. at 2780 Heather Road, a beautiful wee home in a quiet suburb of Golden, Colorado. She'd lived a nice life, but her rebellious streak would often cause conflict within the family home. At the tender age of 16, Cara decided to drop out of high school, and obviously her parents weren't happy, so they gave her the old "our house, our rules" speech. So Cara moved out of their house and into a small apartment in Denver. The apartment building was known for being, for lack of a better word, a bit of a shithole. The rent was only $48 a month, which would be the equivalent of $370 in today's money. So this made it very popular with sex workers and drug addicts who couldn't afford more expensive accommodation. Young Cara shared her apartment with another woman who has always remained anonymous. Locals were under the impression, though, that this woman had a revolving door of men coming in and out of the apartment. Hardly an ideal environment for a 16-year-old girl. For the first few weeks, Cara revelled in her newfound freedom, inviting friends over and staying up late, and pretty soon her apartment is known as the party spot. But the shine of independent life had started to wear off, and the runaway confided in her best friend Marianne Weaver that she was ready to move back home and re-enroll in high school. Marianne Weaver, born on the 27th of August 1953, had befriended Cara in high school. She was 1 year older than her, and they were described as being an odd pair. 18-year-old Marianne lived with her parents in Lakewood. She was a skilled horse rider and a devoted young mother. At the age of 16, Marianne had fallen pregnant with her daughter. She attended Arafo Community College, determined to build a better life for her and her baby girl. Becoming a mum at such a young age made Marianne grow up fast. She was mature and nurturing, so when Cara dropped out of high school and ran away from home, Marianne did her best to steer her in the right direction, and if she ever needed her best friend, she was only a phone call away. Living away from home had really been an eye-opener for Cara, and whilst living in what is now known as the Lumber Baron Inn, she'd run into some very undesirable characters. After being robbed only days before her 17th birthday, she was over it. She admitted it was time to listen to Marianne's advice and leave. Sadly, she never got the chance. Whilst investigators looked over the property once more, they discovered another possible entry point for the killer. In the basement of the Lumber Baron Inn, there was a manhole which connected to the street outside. This would explain how the killer gained access to the apartment building undetected. Detectives believed that he had lowered himself into the basement and had hidden away until nightfall, waiting to make his move on Cara. The knowledge of this secret hiding place would suggest a certain level of familiarity with the property, and that the murderer of Cara and Marianne had been in that apartment building several times before. Over the past 52 years, friends and loved ones have gathered their own theories on what happened that night. Marianne's own daughter stated online that her grandmother went to her grave fully convinced that the killings were mob related. Apparently, Cara had witnessed some shady goings on and had been threatened as a result by the Smaldoni family, also known as Colorado's crime family. The three brothers, Eugene, Clyde and Chauncey, ran North Denver from the 1930s well into the 1970s. The Italian siblings specialised in money laundering, loan sharking, drug trafficking and racketeering, and many of their clients were known to frequent Cara's apartment building. Marianne's family went to law enforcement with this tip 15 years ago, but it would appear that there has been no concrete proof tying the brothers to the crime. However, Cara and Marianne's close friends have other ideas about who might be responsible for their deaths. Remember John Lechuga, the friend who just happened to stumble upon the crime scene? According to mutual friends at the time, John had a bad temper and was very into Cara. However, those feelings were not reciprocated and she just saw John as a creepy older dude. In the weeks leading up to the murder, he'd become infatuated with her and was very upset that she would soon be leaving to return home. And I have to admit, there are some red flags in his initial statement. His reasoning for being in the apartment that night just doesn't really make sense. He said he just happened to be driving by when he saw the lights were off and thought this was strange because Cara's apartment was always jumping. However, this was actually a Monday night and he admitted to seeing Marianne's car parked outside. Was it really so bizarre to assume that the girls were just having a quiet night? John had also been to several parties at the Lumber Baron Inn apartments, which meant he would have known about the secret entrance in the basement. But of course, this is all speculation. There was no murder weapon found at the scene, which would hint that the killer had had time to stash it or had simply taken it away with him. And why would John risk placing himself at the scene of the crime that night? But if we're playing devil's advocate, it wouldn't be the first time that a killer had inserted himself into his own murder investigation. The apartment building has certainly changed since that awful night back in 1970. However, it would seem as if Cara and Marianne have been unable to move on. Since their deaths, guests and residents of the Valentine Suite have experienced paranormal phenomenon. Are the girls still trapped in that room waiting for justice? The home was built in the late 1800s by Scottish immigrant and lumber baron John Mowat. The home was constructed using the finest of woods and decorated with the most luxurious furniture. The family were known to hold lavish parties in the upstairs ballroom, featuring a 20-foot pyramid ceiling and polished maple floor. And here we all are struggling to pay our electricity bill. Mowat adored the home and poured his heart and soul into maintaining its pristine condition. Unfortunately, it would later be passed down to others who didn't share that sentiment. After decades of mistreatment, it had become a shadow of its former self, and in the mid-1960s, it was turned into a tenement of low-rent apartments. So, unsurprisingly, by the 1990s, the building was now condemned and in deep need of some TLC. Enter Walter and Julie Keller, the couple who restored the property to the lumber baron inn that the residents of Denver know and love today. But it would seem like the horrors of the past couldn't as easily be erased with a quick lick of paint. As soon as the inn opened its doors and welcomed its first guests, reports started flooding in of strange goings-on, such as women's voices crying and whispering, and invisible hands grabbing at your ankles from under the bed. In fact, the Valentine suite where Marianne and Cara were murdered has become so notorious for its supernatural activities that it even featured in Netflix's 28 Days Haunted this Halloween. A group of paranormal experts spent 4 weeks at the property, and day by day they uncovered its brutal past. The lumber baron inn's reputation certainly precedes it, but sadly, in tales of ghosts and angry spirits, the real story of what occurred there appears to have gotten lost along the way. Everyone wants to discuss the hauntings, but not why, if they're true, they're happening. Those two girls were real human beings with real families, and after 52 years, people are more interested in spirit boards and EMF machines than finding real justice for Marianne and Cara. Marianne's own daughter is doubtful about these alleged sightings. She's visited the lumber baron inn herself in recent years, but has made no contact with the spirit of her mother. Many psychics and sensitives have claimed to have stayed the night at the hotel in the hopes of helping the girls cross over. But if they're still hanging around after half a century, I'd say the only way to get them to move on would be to catch the monster who put them there, forever wandering the halls of the lumber baron inn. If you have any information regarding Cara and Marianne's case, please don't hesitate to get in touch with the Denver PD. It's never too late. I hope you all enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. For me, it really helps this wee channel o' mine. If you're watching for the first time and the toddler makeup and hair clips haven't put you off, then please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes. And if you're wondering what this wee Scottish lassie gets up to in her free time, don't worry, it's nothing exciting. But you can follow me, not home and not through a manhole, because we both agree that's illegal, on Instagram at Megan Truecrime. I also have a TikTok page at Megan.truecrime, and for all my fellow fossils out there who are just slathering on the cream at night, hoping it makes a difference, we use Twitter. Do you still use Twitter? At Megan Truecrime. But it's not all doom and gloom here this week, because in the true crime community we've had some incredible developments. If you're not aware, Janelle Matthews' murder has been solved after 38 years. Steve Pankey has been put behind bars, and I really hope that he steps on a rusty nail every day for the rest of his life. I actually covered Janelle's case late last year around Christmas time, as she had went missing after a Christmas pageant, and I think it's just amazing with all the advances in DNA technology that her family finally have the answers and Janelle can finally be at peace. We've also seen an arrest in the Delphi, Indiana murders of Abby and Libby, and I'm so happy that they have an arrest. It isn't a conviction yet. You know, everyone is entitled to a fair trial, so we'll see how that goes, but fingers crossed this is the right guy, he's behind bars, and finally the family can begin to heal once the trial is over. And how amazing would it be if we could add the lumber baron and murders to that pile of solved cold cases? Everyone, please share Cara and Marianne's story. I love you all so much. So remember to lock your doors, don't talk to strangers, and don't climb into someone's house through a manhole. It's dirty, okay? It's like a 1980s guitarist. You just don't know where it's been. See ya! I'm off to eat some Halloween treats, even though it's not Halloween anymore. It's not